So good morning. My name is Anne Marie Nada, and I welcome you on behalf of ACO Programs Committee. I'll start us off with some announcements. So just switch the slide there, Kat, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So case collaboration is a free opportunity for members of the ACO, and our goal is to provide connection and the opportunity for collaboration on ADHD coaching approaches. If you're a guest today, thank you for attending. We encourage you to become a member of ACO if you haven't already. So you should know that we're taking a month off to rest and rejuvenate in August, and regular case collaborations will return in September with the topics that you see on the screen, and in October. So case collaboration is on the third Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. Eastern, so mark your calendars to join us. Also, if you haven't heard, ACO is teaming up with ADA and CHAD to put on the International ADHD Conference in November. This is the big ADHD event of the year in North America, and you don't want to miss it. So coaching can feel rather solitary at times, and this is a wonderful opportunity to gather with and learn from others. We're anticipating over 1,000 attendees from the three organizations. So it's happening November 8th to 11th in 2018 in St. Louis, Missouri at the Hyatt Regency. ACO sent an email to you on July 16th that contained discount codes for ACO members. So check that out. So if you just want to switch the slide there, Kat. So this is a little bit of housekeeping, and I can hear from the feedback I'm hearing in my ears that it's a good time to review this. So we received some wonderful feedback from our last case collaboration indicating that people are finding this to be a valuable professional opportunity for growth. We're also happy to receive some messages that will help us improve the quality of this experience. We value all feedback and appreciate it when people take time to let us know what's going well and what we can do better. So as a group, we are learning and improving our use of this technology. We have two main goals that are a bit at odds with each other. So we want true collaboration and active participation from those on the call, but we also want the experience to be smooth and enjoyable for all with minimal sound issues. One of the best ways you can do that is to be muted unless you're speaking in the moment. So we'll take just a minute now to show you some things that will help all of us to work together to meet both of those goals. So when you move your cursor to the bottom of your screen, a black toolbar will appear. There are three things that are important to us there. So at the left corner, there's the microphone icon. You can click it and it's like an on-off switch. So just click it to mute and unmute yourself. So go ahead and give that a try right now. Okay, and notice that on the picture next to your name, you can see if you're muted or unmuted. So at different points in the call, you can just check that for yourself, because sometimes we unmute to participate and then forget to mute again. So just, check it throughout the call. So you can participate in two ways: by raising your hand or by typing in the chat box. We'll do our best as facilitators to monitor these areas and call on you to participate. Something we learned last time is we've had so many people participating, we didn't realize we had to scroll down to see all the raised hands. So some people were waiting for quite a while to get called on. So we'll do our best today to address that. So to raise your hand, go back down to the black bar at the bottom of your screen and click Participants. A panel will open at the side of your screen and you can see your name along with everyone else on the call. So there's a raise hand button at the bottom of that panel, and click it now. You should be able to see your hand next to your name. And so when your hand is raised, you're letting us know that you have something to contribute to the call, either a comment or a question. And we really encourage you to try to remember to lower your hand when you're done participating or when you don't have anything to say anymore. Insert ADHD joke here. So try to remember to lower your hand so we know who is ready to participate. Another way to participate is to type in the chat box. So go down to the bottom toolbar again and click chat. You'll see another panel open. Good morning, Dana. Actually, I've got a little nibble over here too. I might be indulging later. We should just call this a breakfast meeting. You're right. Oh, goodness. In this panel at the very bottom, it says two, and it should look like everyone right now. And if you click that, you can see, you can send a chat to anybody. So we hope that you don't get into private side chats. But hey, if you can handle paying attention both ways, I'm jealous. So if you send the message to everyone, it'll show up in the group chat, and we'll be monitoring that box and bring that into conversation as much as we can. So one very last tip that solves 90% of sound quality issues, especially echoes and feedback, is for you to use a headset. So when the sound comes out of your computer's speaker, it sometimes gets picked up by your computer's microphone and it causes echoes. So if the sound goes right through the headset straight into your ears, it doesn't interfere with the microphone and there's a much cleaner sound. Okay, so hopefully that'll help us, have a cleaner sound on the call and a way for everybody to really actively participate. So on the next slide, Kat, if you don't mind switching, we've got the opening word today is looking. And we have a new email address for you to send that to, cceu@adhdcoaches.org, within 24 hours, and you'll receive a core competency CCEU. So for today's case collaboration format, Kay Axtell will lead our conversation with a little bit of background on today's topic, switching gears, making transitions, so that we have a common understanding of the terms we're using. She'll ask some questions to stir some reflection on experiences you've had with clients. We encourage you to bring that into a professional collaboration on best practices and to get input on challenging coaching scenarios. We've had some wonderful experiences of learning from each other in conversation on our past calls. So speaking of transitions, let's switch from the technical stuff to the case collaboration content. Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie, and thank you for so beautifully covering everything. So our topic today is switching gears / making transitions. So the first thing we want to do is kind of define making transitions or switching gears, because we feel that it's very, very important that you and your clients use the same language. Transitions can mean many things. I know for me as a high school teacher, it meant getting people, high school kids, to transition to the real world. And we even had a program that was extended called Transition. However, it really means so much more, I've discovered as a coach. And one of the things, one of the reasons we want to focus on it today, and we feel that it's so important, is because it's not exactly something we always identify when we're talking about executive function challenges, even though it is one, but it is something that almost always comes up with our clients as some kind of an obstacle. So we'd like to hear from you all, and what is your definition of transition or switching gears? What does it mean to you? So welcoming your responses here.
Dana's got her hand up.
Dana. Oh, and I'm not. Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, transitions to me, I teach my clients is that there are many sizes of transitions, and it's actually a shift from one thing to another. So there can be large transitions, as in moving or a death of a spouse or something like that. There are medium-sized transitions, coming home from vacation, the start of a school year, the ending of the school year. And then there are tiny ones, just shifting from thing to thing throughout the day, from home to work. And there are places where the ice gets really thin, and with ADD you tend to fall in and can get absolutely lost and swept away.
Beautifully said, Dana. And thank you. We had kind of, when we talked about planning this, we'd identified large and small. But boy, that medium one is just so important as well.
Yeah.
Who else? Other coaches, what are your definitions of transition? Large, medium, or small? Well, I have noticed, there are the big ones, as Dana mentioned, and I think so many times our ADD clients don't. I think it's important for us to help them prepare for things like that. It might be readjusting after divorce. It might be getting used to retirement. It might be that switching from high school to college for some of the big ones. And I think sometimes gaining that awareness, which we'll talk about later, because that's one of the core competencies, and helping them see that what's going on for them in the big areas is a transition. And I think as coaches, we can really, really help them prepare for those things, because maybe they don't see them coming, and sometimes they're just blindsided. So sometimes I think our job as a coach is to help them realize what's happening right now. You've just gone through a major transition, and I'm kind of jumping to the next slide.
Well, Ruth has her hand up.
Okay.
Ruth Wilmot.
Ruth, yes.
Hi. I just wanted to, it's interesting because when I work primarily with college students and slightly older, and the transitions that they talk about or are the challenges they have when they get started doing work from having not been, or more importantly, they say, once I get going on an assignment, I really have a hard time stopping to switch to something else. Instead, I decide to try to finish the whole paper right then, because I don't feel like I'll ever be able to get it started again. So I'm fascinated by, I'm sorry, is it Dana? Your definition of the three things, because clearly all of those are also at work. I have a kind of hypothesis, but I wonder about this. It seems to me that larger and medium-sized transitions may be something that's more typical of all of us. And that those small, what we're calling small but terribly challenging for our clients with EF issues, seems maybe to be a little bit more pronounced if you have an executive functioning challenge as opposed to being a strictly neurotypical. But it's just something that popped into my head. I'm curious to know if that's jives with other people's thinking.
So Dana's got.
So that the larger ones are so you could certainly normalize that. Whether, I find myself in a situation like that saying to a client, whether you have an ADHD brain or not, this would be a very challenging thing that you're about to do or go through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see Dana and both Anne Marie. So Dana, you want to respond first?
Ruth, I hadn't thought about it like that before, but I think that's very, very true. Most people have trouble with normal transitions. I believe it's magnified more with people with ADHD or EF. But it is those micro transitions, those small transitions that happen throughout the day, throughout life, that really hang us up, hang our clients up, and it causes great shame. And it causes great discouragement because they don't understand what's going on. They just think, oh, I'm a failure. Why can't I do this? Everybody else can do this. And so but I really appreciate your whatever I'm sorry. It's whatever you came up with, your idea. Good one.
How about Anne Marie?
Thank you.
How about Anne Marie next?
Well, and just to highlight what Dana said about, yes, transitions are challenging for many people, especially those larger ones. But then I think having ADHD, perhaps, as the coach, we can bring some awareness to the additional impact of ADHD on some of those larger transitions. So there's that emotional factor, the automatic negative thinking, which could continue to drag us down. So staying in that emotional upheaval with the life change or the transition could add complication.
Yeah, I would add, I think another factor is how interested or involved I am with the thing that I'm going to have to transition from. That's going to be a harder transition than maybe some other things, so I take that into account too.
Yeah, I think for both Kat and Ruth, what you brought up was that what we often call hyperfocus is once again a difficulty in transitioning. And while it is kind of identified as an executive function challenge because we talk about flexibility, but to really get into the nitty gritty and help our clients, because their brains maybe aren't set like other people's just kind of got set to shift gears. And for ours, it's more difficult. And I love what Dana said too about the shame involved, is helping them understand, hey, just the awareness of this is, this is fine. This is something that we can absolutely make some plans for. Is there anyone else that has a comment? These have been excellent comments on transitions, your definitions of transitions or switching gears. And I don't see any hands up, so let's switch to the next slide because we're kind of getting into that anyway. So what are some of the typical challenges you see with your clients when it comes to transitions? So Ruth, that was a great one about when they're writing a paper, they can't stop. What other specific things have come up with your clients that are challenges in this area of switching gears or transitions?
I see one of the challenges with mine is just when they're getting up in the morning and going from the the still sleep to the wakeful, trying to just move from that. Sometimes they struggle mightily.
Wow, and the same could be said true. It's interesting, we can relate to our own style, right?
Right.
The same could be true about transitioning into getting to sleep. It's like hard to stop that world cage from running and to transition into some form of relaxation so that you can let go.
I see 3 hands. So Janine, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'm thinking about, I do a lot of work with university students too, and I'm thinking the getting started, getting started on the assignment or getting started at homework. And so one of the things to help, I talk a lot about transitions, that transition to just setting the stage and, kind of like a production. Let's make sure that, that you can anticipate that there's a change coming in that transition to getting to the library or setting up your desk, open up your backpack and just anticipate that it's coming. So that can help them through that transition time. But it's a real issue in that getting started on doing the work. I would totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way you set the stage that way, and I love the way you broke it into the steps, identifying and seeing each step.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Janine.
How about Anne-Marie?
Oh my goodness, this is like a gong show for me today. Earlier, trying to raise my hand, I actually physically raised my hands.
If we can see it, you're good.
I'm with you, Dana. I need my coffee, I swear to God. But I'm on Eastern time, so I have no excuse. Anyhow, speaking of transitions, I have some clients, adult clients who are unemployed and are having a really, really hard time establishing a morning routine. So earlier, I think it was Kat or Kay who said, yep, that switching from sleeping into not just being up and around, like up out of bed, but then getting started with what they want to do that day. So I would love to hear what other people do, because I've got a couple that are, we've tried a number of different things, but they're just really having a tough time establishing a morning routine that works for them. And it is hand in hand with that sleeping routine.
How about Dana? She's got her hand up.
I remember what I was going to say. Actually, Anne-Marie, I would look at what your, and this is a little tangent, but I would look at what your problem with your unemployed clients. It's also, you need to look at structure and stimulation, because it's often, if there's not enough stimulation, not enough going on, they can't get started. Anyway, back to transitions. A big one that's happening now with many people I work with is coming back from vacations. And this is one that people don't realize, but they can sit at say they get back at work on Monday and they're sitting at their desk for 3 or 4 days without even being able to think. And they're thinking, I just had a week or 2 off and I'm supposed to be back at work being productive now and refreshed, and I can't even think. Mm-hmm. And it's what I find is that's often vacation, returning from a trip is a huge transition that people aren't even aware of.
Mm-hmm. So. Wow, that's really a good one.
And can I add on the sleep part, just like we mellow out and we lower the lights and we do all the things that are less stimulating so that we can start ramping down, we could do the reverse in the morning when we get up. If we notice we have a hard time transitioning, we can expose ourselves to the bright light, open the windows, you could look at the bright light from your phones or your tablets or whatever. You could do some little things that just kind of re-stimulate you from that sleep mode back to the awake mode. But the other thing that they have to remember is if you're not holding a consistent go to bed and get up routine, you're going to struggle with that all the time. So they need to get up at the same time every morning, whether it's a weekday or a weekend, and establish that so that, the brain knows, it's time to get up. Everything knows it's time to get up.
See, I think we have Andrea as well.
Yes, Andrea.
Thanks, Kat.
Mm-hmm.
We are. It stopped cutting for a few minutes. I think what I'm most appreciating are the comments around the stimulation. As an adult with ADHD, I know that without stimulation, I'm a wreck. I mean, nothing happens. And I had a long conversation with my husband last night just about the bedtime routine, because I struggle with that because I know bed is going to be boring. Not every night, but sleep is boring. I don't get anything done when I'm asleep. So I don't want to go to bed. And then there are all those steps that have to be done to get ready for bed. So it just makes it sheer drudgery. And we literally had the conversation last night. I said, how do you do this? How do you, as a neurotypical person, just come upstairs and just do these steps? And so it was a really enlightening conversation as far as, how he handles it as opposed to how I need to do it. And, I need all these little stimulating games and things like that to keep it moving. And I don't know, it was very enlightening for me. And it's strange that we had that conversation last night.
Well, I'd like to go to the next slide because we're starting to get into some of the what do we do, I believe, how to get the clients to drill down. So Andrea, I would love to hear what steps he shared and if you tried those and how they worked.
For him, it's really about, he is a very, very routinized person. So it gets to be 10 o'clock each night and he's going to bed within a few minutes of that. And I've gotten my sleep under control over the past 5 years by connecting and linking to his sleep pattern. So I used to be up till 1 or 2 in the morning. Now I go to bed at the same time he does. And for him, there doesn't need to be any stimulation. So last night I tried just sort of talking him through my steps. It's like, I have a lot more steps than you do. And here they are. And he let me share like how frustrated I was. And I was like, I'm ticked off. I have to do this and you don't have to do this. And what's up with that? And it made it a little more stimulating because I wasn't going through it just on my own and just sort of being dragged through it. So I'm going to try that again tonight and see what happens. But I think the biggest thing that's really helped me over the years is just building more and more awareness around how the transitions are so hard and what makes the transition easier for me, which is always stimulation. Every single time it's stimulation. Make it fun, make it interesting, connect it to another person, all the normal stuff.
How do you do that? I'm curious. How do you make going to bed fun? Or your steps?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Oh, how do you make going to bed fun, or how do you make the steps fun?
I think
for info here.
Well, no, I think the fun, it could be, I play a lot of, and this is probably way too much information. I play a lot of weird little games.
No, it's great.
How fast can you do this?
Yeah.
How can you mix these steps up? my past as a professional organizer makes me think about what's the most efficient way to do it. And last night I figured out that, wow, if you're brushing your teeth or if you're taking out your contacts or always fighting over the bottle of solution, I'll go set up my CPAP machine and get that taken care of. And this can be much more efficient and I'm not waiting around for you. It's just little stuff like that. So constantly trying to problem solve, make it faster. Those are
fantastic. Those are fantastic. And they really hit the core competency of creating awareness. And so those little tricks, I know my clients love them. That's why I was digging there. So,
okay.
Thank you, Andrea.
Ruth
sure.
has got her hand up. Ruth? You want to unmute here? I'll unmute you, Ruth. I think.
There?
Ruth, there you are.
Yeah, hi. I think I'm unusual in this group in that I'm primarily neurotypical, although at times I do experience things that resonate somehow with my clients, and this is one of them, the going to bed. And for me, a real key is to be reading a really engaging book, because I basically don't let myself sit down and read books in the middle of the day. So the only time I can read this fascinating book is when I finally am in bed. So it's a reward for stopping what's fairly interesting that I also would like to keep doing, and helping myself move through all those steps to get into bed, knowing that I can finally get back to that fascinating book. And right now I don't have one, and so I'm experiencing some of these same challenges. So I share that idea of that reward being helpful.
And you know what, I do that same thing, and I'm not neurotypical, and I've been concerned that I'd get to, into the book, but somehow that doesn't happen. But what I like about that is not screen time, because some of the evidence that screen time will stimulate you where reading the book doesn't seem to. And I've tried that with a few clients, and it seems to be. So thank you, Ruth. Who else do we have?
Janine and Dale. So we got several hands.
So I just had an interesting situation with an individual who is a professional woman who had inattentive type and was really recognized for herself. She actually came up with these words that I thought was interesting. She realized how difficult transitions were for her, or are for her. And she said, what I'm realizing in this awareness is I have much less difficulty transitioning down than I do transitioning up. And an example would be, so she'd come home after work and walk into her apartment, and the transition down was easy because she could transition to sitting on the couch and doing very little for the rest of the night quite easily. But the transitioning up was like, how do I get up off the couch and go out and take care of things I need to take care of, and make an appointment, or that's what we talked about, is actually she would do it if she had an appointment to attend to, but she wanted to go to the gym, for example. So that became very difficult, because once the transition down had happened and she found herself on the couch, getting back out the door was almost impossible. So it was just interesting language to me that she identified these two different, that felt very different to her, transitioning down or transitioning up, and that she realized how she managed them differently.
Wow. Thank you. That's fascinating.
How about Adela?
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Good morning, Adela.
Hi. What I have, or what my clients struggle with, is not just finding the structure and the stimulation in the transition, but finding that intrinsic motivation again. So it's almost like there's a humongous list that they have to go through in their head of, what are the games I can play? How can I make this interesting? How can I make it fun? But also, why do I want to do this in the first place? And linking it back to values. And it's just so much for them to think about to get through that transition, especially the up transition, that they give up. I guess that's the biggest challenge that I'm facing with some of my clients right now. It's just too many steps for them to think about. So any help on that would be appreciated.
This is Kay, and hopefully some other people will jump in too. I'm loving that we're really helping each other with cases. I love that you mentioned values. So, and also I love that you went back to what we talked about last month, which was intrinsic and extrinsic. So it's so cool how we can pull all this stuff together. So, is there a way that we can help them identify those values or that fun thing? Or what are some thoughts about that? Who's got some ideas?
Dale? Just unmute yourself there. There you go.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are.
A 21-year-old or 23-year-old yesterday about getting to work on time, and he's just starting to realize that that it's important for him. He's in the past he's told himself, it doesn't really matter if I get to work on time, and now he's realizing that he is important. And so then in terms of motivation, we talked about the night before and his bedtime, and it's hard for him to get more than 5 or 6 hours of sleep because of the video games. So he got into what would be fun and the emotions. So he got the values that he does, one, that he wants to be seen as responsible and that he really does care. And so that was a shift. But what he really decided to do is to emotionalize getting up in the morning by becoming a character in Star Wars in some of the video games. So he decided that he's going to be the pilot in a special task force, and that he's part of the team, the Star Wars team, and that it's his job to be responsible to the team. And he linked that to getting to work on time.
Wow.
That people really do care about him, and that he is important, and that he matters, and that he values himself.
Wow.
So
that's great.
That just happened yesterday, and it's pretty exciting.
Cool. That's very exciting. And exactly, matches what we were talking about.
Yeah, because he's out of a treatment program for anxiety and depression.
Wow.
So I just felt like this was a big shift.
Wow.
But it boiled down to his own creativity.
And I love that. And someone else mentioned, I think sometimes, I remember when I first started coaching, I was told sometimes the best ideas come from our clients. And when we can draw that out of them to them, that's just incredible. When they can be involved in designing the actions, which once again is a competency, then I think, wow, that's a sign of a good coach, Dale. Good for you. Anybody else? How do you know when a client's challenged? We've been kind of talking about the challenges. Anyone have ideas on identifying, knowing when they're challenged? How do we tell they're challenged?
So I've got Anne-Marie.
Sometimes when a client is really struggling with procrastination, that's part of the conversation that we have. Like, what's at the root of procrastination? So sometimes it's not knowing how to get started, but sometimes it's also, I don't know, how to get started. But it's not so much a task-specific thing, but the actual transition that's difficult. Not knowing how to leave the one thing and start another.
Mm-hmm. And I think Ruth did a good job of identifying that as well. And she's like, they can't, stop at the paper.
Right.
So, a lot of those things.
Yeah. How about Dana?
I know that they're challenged when they have an intention and they can't follow through with it. And often it's a transition issue. Mm-hmm. And then we have to look at routine steps, simplifying, all of the things that go into making the transition easier. But the first thing is to identify, no, you're not some failure. It's not you, it's your brain. And we got to make these transitions easier for you.
Absolutely. And the fact that they have an intention, that helps too, with the intrinsic motivation to take them back to that. And
but that can also be hard because we are people of lovely intentions that can't follow through on them. Exactly. And then that gets very discouraging. After day after day after day to say, I want to be in bed by 10:30, and then it's 1 o'clock and here she's still playing on the phone, or he's still doing whatever he's doing. So
you're absolutely
but the intention, at least having that, is a starting place. That's a sign. I use that as a sign that they're struggling with intention, with transitions.
Good one.
How about Ruth?
I just wanted to tag on to something Dana just said about, they keep going to bed at 1 o'clock and they want to go to sleep at 10. I have so many times thought to myself, whoa, that's like jet lag. I wouldn't be able to do that myself. To go to bed, 3 hours earlier wouldn't be physically possible. So just like anything, finding a smaller piece of that's achievable. So I might suggest, so what if you were to change that to 30 minutes earlier? And I mean, maybe it's like avoiding, putting your toe in water instead of jumping right in. It's very possible, but for some people, I think just making it a more realistic goal to shift. Can you go to bed, a half hour, and then a day or two later go a whole hour earlier, and see how that goes? Because I think about for myself, I would have tremendous difficulty waking up, going to sleep 3 hours earlier. For one thing, I wouldn't have any reason to fall asleep. I just lie there tossing and turning. So it just seems like an unrealistic goal, and finding a more realistic one is often really helpful.
Yeah, those little steps again, manageable.
Yeah.
How about Andrea?
Yeah, going back to that, how do you know that someone's challenged? I think that one of the ways that I test right away is when they contact me, I have them call me for our initial conversation. And that's a really good indication as to whether they're on time or not. Is if they're on time, then they're probably not a person who's having that much difficulty with transition challenges. If they're 5 or 10 minutes late, like the person I spoke to the other day, as we spoke, it was obvious that she had all kinds of transition issues going on in her life. So I think there's that piece right away. And then there's also just what happens over time. Are they showing up late to appointments? And that typically is very indicative of transition challenges in their world.
Excellent. I think we have Dana again as well.
I just somehow lost the screen. Oh no, I've lost all of you. Oh well, I'll keep talking. That's really weird.
We
So
still hear you.
Yeah.
The time, calling on time, that's not always a sign that someone has transition issues, because some people are just able to be on time, especially when they're stimulated by the first call. So it's over time and they maybe have other specific transition issues that aren't related to time. So just as an aside, that's not just a blanket indication of transition challenges.
So being able to even identify that kind of is part of our task.
Yeah.
Well, I think we are ready for the next slide. Catherine, don't see any other hands up. So where would you begin? And again, I've referred to the competencies a number of times here. How might a coach help a client grow in self-awareness around transitions? So that's a really good one, because we've talked a lot about maybe we have that awareness and they don't have the awareness. So who's got some good ideas of just how a coach might help them?
Dana?
Feel like I'm talking more than normal today. But this is one of the popular modules in my Success Club. So it's just explaining it to them. Often they know they struggle with ADHD, but they don't understand the nuances of it. And the first step is to explain, okay, this is what transitions are, and give examples of them and the different sizes of transitions. And then helping them identify, oh, that's a transition. That's why I can never get started on my work when I get into the office. Or that's why when I get home, I end up flopped on the sofa watching TV and never doing anything else that I intended to do that night, or whatever it might be. So it's identifying, increasing the awareness, and then normalizing it.
Wow. Well said. Well done.
How about Janine?
This just came up for me, but I think I'm going to try this. I really like sort of visual tools. I'm someone who I draw a lot with my clients. Like I will sketch out something to make something kind of visible, and just, to draw on a paper that says, here's activity A in this box, and here's activity B, and get them to identify, what those two activities are. And then there's this space in the middle. And what's in that space in the middle, and how do you manage it, and how do you walk through that space and break, kind of give them something visible that we can then come up with some really specific steps that have to be taken, or the thinking that has to go into that space to be able to move to activity B.
Wow.
That's my idea.
Love that. So, and this kind of also hits the next question, which is how might a coach engage the client to explore alternative ideas and solutions? That was an excellent one, space in the middle. Who else? Anyone else?
Della.
Hi. So one of the things that works with some of my clients, or actually they've brought it up themselves as solutions, is giving themselves time limits. So acknowledging the fact that they need some time for the transition, and having them play around with different times, estimating, well, how long do you think you need between activity A and activity B? And using that, that gaming fun aspect of it to set a timer and say, okay, give yourself 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever they choose to go through that transition time. And maybe it is just sit on the sofa and chill, or, scroll through Instagram for a little bit before, the timer goes off and you go to your next activity. So that they have some structure in it, and then it's a game. And then they're also very aware and forgiving of themselves that they need those times.
I love that, Adela. And one of the things too that I have found to be very helpful for this is, first of all, you're getting it all set up in steps. But secondly, the idea, I love what you said about when they're getting a task done that maybe is not too pleasant, and they need some time transitioning into that with something that's pleasant for them. Maybe a quick walk outside, and there's some research that proves that that's so good to clear our brains. And I think especially for our brains, we really need something like that. So being able to put something fun in there, and then talking a lot about what's going to be the challenge here. The challenge is going to be transitioning back. And so do we do that with a timer? Or how do we do that so that they get in this habit of transitioning back and forth? Because I think lots of times for our clients, it's really tough to stick to something as long as they want to stick to it, because their brain just doesn't stay focused that long. So if we can help them transition back and forth from, take a break and then come back, and especially like you said, with something positive, I think that's excellent. Andrea.
I think this is a great opportunity to explore and help our clients create metaphors. So the metaphor that can bring it up a level that they can use in a lot of different circumstances, as opposed to having a particular tool for a particular, in this circumstance, you do this, in your circumstance, you do that. So help them understand their downshifting. I had this one client, and she just connects everything to cars. Everything is to cars. So we talk about the downshifts, and we talk about the turns, and we talk about the hills, and we talk about, so that for her is always a place to go. And it has been for a couple of years now. So giving them that tool, helping them create that tool, can be a tool for life then.
And a tool that's customized to the client. I love that.
Exactly.
That's what they're really going to relate to. So, anybody else? I guess then, Catherine, we can move to the next slide. And I know we do want to allow time at the end for Anne Marie. Oh, whoops. I thought we did this one. Was I out of order?
Yeah, no, we were on this one and we've come here.
Oh, I was out of order. I don't have the slides in front of me. I've just printed off notes. So I think that we've kind of covered this, but anything else with this, how you drill into the issue of transitions? I think we've talked about that. Does anyone have anything to add with this?
Anne Marie?
I'm wondering if we can drill down and dig a little deeper as a group with the issue that Ruth brought up with some of her clients, the not knowing how to stop because they're afraid they won't be able to start again. So I'm curious to hear how people have worked with clients, you know, coaching them around that stopping, starting stuff.
Now, are you talking about, are we drilling into not knowing when to stop? Or are we drilling down into, I don't want to stop because I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to start again? Because I do remember bringing that up too, which kind of seems separate.
Yeah, let's do the I can't stop because I don't know how to start again.
I'm giving wait time.
Okay.
Oh, we've got some hands here.
How about Andrea?
I guess I'll share what a client of mine has come up with. And her fear was, she was always fearful of not knowing, I can't stop again because I can't start. And the metaphor she came up with was laying breadcrumbs. And she learned how to lay the track of breadcrumbs. And so that when she came back to it, she knew exactly where to pick up. So I think it's, that helping them create a tool like that for themselves. And also it's getting into that belief that they have that they can't do it. How true is that? I know I've struggled with that a lot over the years. Well, I'll never be able to get this started again. Well, yeah, really? You've never been able to start something again? And, once you can get in there and play with that a little bit, a lot of times some things open up and you're able to then, after enough times, have enough awareness of it that you can say, wait a minute, I have done this. So I think for me, it's been those two things working with clients.
Wow, those are excellent. Looks like Dana has some ideas too, and Anne Marie.
Yeah, to jump on Andrea's thought of breadcrumbs, that's a lovely way to put it. It's I work with them to stop intentionally. So instead of just dropping whatever down and dashing out of the room, it's to stop and leave the trail. And often I do this for myself, and they like the idea. Also, I'll just write a love note to me. I always say, Dana, you're here and this is your next step. And I always say, I love you. Which is a little weird, but it makes me feel good when I see it. And then the other thing I like to help people realize is often when you stop something, when you start again, there's a gestation period that you have, your brain's working on it in the background, and you may come back with a wonderful new idea or a new approach or another way to get started on it, and something that's going to make it even better. But those breadcrumbs, that intentionally stopping, and the breadcrumbs, I believe, are very important, or the love note, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for that. That's actually supported by the neuroscience, so thanks, Dana.
Yeah, and our brains just go so long productively. So I think working with them on this, they're going to find out they're much more productive if they can stop and take that break. And Anne-Marie has a thought as well.
I know my clients have really found it helpful to not look at it as a huge project, like an entire term paper or, clutter cleaning a room, but to really deliberately frame it as discrete, smaller projects of like 15 minutes to an hour, whatever their great working period is, so that it doesn't seem like, oh, I can't get started again. No, there's actually a beginning and an end of that section. So they do feel like there's a sense of completion. And then when they're starting again, it's starting the next little bit. And it's easier to start because it's a very defined project.
And it's so much more manageable, and they have so much more success and feel good when they can complete those little pieces as opposed to trying to do the entire term paper.
Right. And then there's the encouragement too to celebrate the completion, because so many times that, you know, pat on the back isn't recognized by them, you know, so taking the time to really celebrate that forward momentum.
For sure. I think Andrea?
That might have been her hand raised previous.
That's what I was wondering.
Okay.
Yeah.
I put my hand back up. That's not just still up. No one else. I'd really love to hear the flip side of that. So, you know how we kind of branched off into the two. What about the times when people are engaged in something and they kind of want to stop, but have a hard time stopping? I'm thinking of those sorts of things like scrolling through Facebook, or like those things that they just can't stop, even though they know there's something next to go to.
That's a great one, Anne-Marie. Who's found some tools, or what do we do? Because that's huge.
Ruth's hand is up.
I don't, this is not the silver bullet by any means. And I'm sure we've probably all tried this, but I encourage students that I'm working with, and that's because that comes up a lot, Anne-Marie, is, you know, to set a timer, but I also encourage that timer to not just be a buzzer, but to label it so that when the timer goes off, there's actually a message, and it can be anything from, you really want to pass English class, you know, so therefore you want to get back to the paper, you know, looking at the value or the bigger goal as to why it is they want to stop and shift to the next thing. And some students use rather, what's the term? Strong language in their little phrase. A stronger version of "you idiot, don't keep doing this," something that, and they like to change it each time so that it has a little more of a impact than simply a buzzer going off.
Okay.
But I'm the first to say that doesn't always work. But for some people, for a short time, it's interesting enough to cause the brain to shift and say, "Oh, that's right. You know, I really did want to finish this paper tonight, and I won't if I don't stop, scrolling through Facebook or whatever."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's self-talk that you're getting them to.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And something else that I use, I find, is just because they are time blind, so they're not even realizing the time. And if they're not paying it, if they haven't set an alarm, but if I'm on a screen, there are ways that subtle ways that by using an app, it'll pop the time up, the hourly time up, just on the screen. It pops it up, doesn't say anything, but it's like, "Hello, look what time it is." You know, "Oh, look, here's the time." So it's just kind of, it's flashing it in front of them again to say, "Do you see what time it is?" Right? Because they are not seeing the time.
I think Anne-Marie, is your hand up again?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
That just reminded me, one of my clients set a timer, and they had a song go off, and it was a particular song. So they started getting habituated to, oh, this particular song means I get back to work. So it was kind of like Janine's idea of setting the stage. That was part of them setting the stage to getting back to homework.
And that could be something very friendly to the musical intelligence brain. So finding, what I love about hearing all this from everybody is how you're all customizing it to your clients, which just fits in with everything. You know your clients well, and you're helping them to know themselves, and you're guiding them into something. Then it goes back to something that works for them. So gorgeous. And
What about Dana?
Dana.
The phones, it's such an interesting challenge.
Yes.
And it's so, we're still in the early stages, and I believe it's an addiction. I know the science is starting to come out, and it just, it hits the dopamine center, all of this stuff. All those suggestions are fantastic, and I appreciate them. Another one that I work with is I have my clients identify how it feels when they're using their phone, because it kind of feels icky when you're there scrolling through Facebook or you're scrolling through Instagram, and you're just doing it because you're magnetically attracted to it. It doesn't feel good, at least to me and my clients. And so having them identify when they start to get kind of that creepy feeling going on, and I work a lot with awareness because I think that's really key to living easier with ADHD. So that helps them notice, oh, this is what's going on. Put down the damn phone and go do something else. Go live your life.
Love it. Anybody else before we transition back to Anne Marie, who's going to give us our final word and closing? Anne Marie has her hand up, so.
And now I need to remember what I was going to say.
Just take it away.
With building awareness. Oh gosh. Oh, I'm sorry. It was a good one. Oh well. I'll send it out with the CCU. It was right with what you were saying, Dana. Oh gosh. Oh well.
Build awareness, icky feeling inside. Go live your life instead of playing on your phone.
That's it. For my clients who tend toward oppositional thinking, I highlight for them some articles that I've read about developers of apps and software who are like, yeah, no, I don't do this myself because I know what it's designed to do in the brain. And so I'll, kind of nudge my clients with that. And they're like, oh, heck no, I'm not letting them decide what's going on with my brain. They are not in charge of me. I refuse, so it really kind of kicks up that resistance and they start taking more ownership rather than letting someone else hijack their brain.
Very good.
And to add on, Steve Jobs wouldn't let his kids have iPhones or iPads.
Neither does Gates.
Yeah. So there you go.
That's sad.
Wow, good to know.
Yep. Pretty telling.
Okay.
Dale.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that that just was an aha moment for me of creating awareness about that icky feeling. So thanks. I always go back, I kind of keep in the back of my mind the Barkley, like, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And it's that emotion of the why and creating awareness. So that was great. Thanks. Whole good discussion.
No kidding. Thank you all so much. Wow. What a wealth of information we all take back to our clients this week and this month. So if no one else has their hand raised, Anne Marie, do you want to tie up this meeting?
There we go. Kat, can you move us forward to announcements, please? So our closing word today.
Oh, is this a great picture or what?
Oh yeah, we didn't get to the scenarios. We always have them as plan B, but we had such rich conversation. But
that client with the video games.
It fits perfectly what we were talking about.
Yeah, Christine got this. I had to show this to y'all because it was a great picture.
Okay, so today's closing word is ahead. So if you send that to ccu@adhdcoaches.org, so notice that that's a new email address to send that to. I'll get those out to you by the end of the week. So we are wanting to make sure that we meet the professional needs of our members. So we'd love to hear from you. If there are topics or themes that you'd like to see in the upcoming months, we are taking a break in August to rest and rejuvenate. So please join us in September, not October. we'll also have one in November. But thank you to all on the call for attending and participating in this professional conversation. A big thank you to everyone on the programs committee for all their hard work, and we'll see you next time. Have a lovely August. See you in September. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Yes. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Great call. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Dana.